Hi, I'm Justine Bizzocchi, and I am the associate producer with the ReCycle3 project, which is a research and creation project coming out of the work of Jim Bizzocchi, my partner. And Jim presented at the conference here in Milwaukee the other night, but I just wanted to give a little bit of an introduction to that. The work is in the genre of ambient video. It's meant to be very slow and contemplative. And Jim has done many works in ambient video, which are done in the normal video production way. ReCycle is an attempt, an experiment to create the same type of video, but using a computational system instead of handcrafting the sequencing of the images. And it is programmed with Max, and it has a database of video clips which have been shot by Jim and another cinematographer, Glenn Crawford, all from the Rocky Mountains. So there is a consistency to the database of images to create this ambient video. The sequencing is essentially run through a system of tagging of the shots at two levels. One is mainly the content of the shots, such as birds, mountains, or sky. There are also a few more image-based tags, such as camera motion. And the concept is that much like an editor might put together a sequence known as a montage sequence, you would normally choose several shots which share a similarity. And so the engine is able to identify clips that share commonalities and sequence them together. Max also provides a set of transitions that can be used. And since ambient video has no hard cuts, every shot has a transition which is a slow-moving transition to the next shot.
I want to pick up where Kathi started. I really have to call out to Justine Bizzocchi, who's my partner, my muse, and more to the point tonight, the technical director and the project producer for both my research and my art. So as Kathi points out, I'm quite lucky to be able to work with Justine. He was lucky to live with it. So ReCycle, I want to talk about ReCycle. It's, I would call it a kind of, ooh, sorry, that's okay. See what I mean? I would call it a computationally generative ambient video sequencing and presentation system. And I'll talk a little bit more about what those mean. Let's see, I just want to check my timing. Okay, here we go. It uses what I would call a recombinant generative strategy because I'm working, mixing and shuffling a fixed set of media assets. The kind of the background, the work that I do, it's rooted in concepts of environment and nature. I'm quite drawn to, and always have been, drawn to the aesthetics and the cultural values of Ansel Adams. I love the outdoors, I love to be there, and I love to shoot video there. I want other people to experience this, and I also want other people to be moved to preserve it. My work is primarily shot in the mountains, mostly the Canadian Rockies, but also in the British Columbia Coast Mountains, the Washington Cascades, and the California Sierra Nevada. But, you know, I've also got some flamingo shots in there, so go figure. I really wanted some red. The aesthetic is an ambient aesthetic, and I can't think about ambient aesthetic without thinking about Brian Eno, who said of ambient music that ambient music must be as easy to ignore as it is to notice. And I subscribe to that. My own version of that dictum is that my ambient video work, according to my standards, it has to meet the following aesthetic tests. Number one, it must never require viewer attention. Number two, it must always reward viewer attention with visual pleasure. And number three, it must support a large number of repeated viewings because it's designed to live on those flat screen and flat panel displays in people's living rooms and business offices and public spaces, things that you could do with that rectangle when you're not watching television or home theater. I think of the work really as, in a way, it's kind of living photography. Like a photograph, you don't have to look at it all the time, but when you do, it should give you some visual pleasure. The most difficult, I don't know what's difficult, the aesthetic challenge that I'm working most actively on now using the computation is the requirement for a large number of repeated viewings. In order to increase the replayability of my ambient video work, I wanted to develop a generative system that would run indefinitely, change things systematically and unpredictably, and would repeat itself very seldom. And so that's what the ReCycle system does. The ReCycle system is based on two databases, a database of video shots and a database of video transitions. And right now I've got on the order of about 125 shots in the video database and 16 video transitions in the transitions database. The system will join shot with transition, shot with transition, shot with transition, shot with transition. It'll run indefinitely. It's in max MSP. It's a fairly reliable system. It'll go for days without crashing. So that's useful for ambient video display. I want to talk a little bit more about some of the specific creative challenges and creative directions and creative imperatives I'm trying to work with. The first one is I moved from linear work. I'm a filmmaker and have been for a long time, longer than I care to remember. No, longer than I like remembering it. I've been a filmmaker since the late 60s. But I moved in this work. I moved from linear video production to computational work. And my current challenge is to continue to work in a computational arena and actually increase the computational complexity. And I'll talk a little bit more about that in a second. I guess the other challenge and direction is there's a dialectic to the work that I do in this kind of mixed computational media. And the dialectic is between an imperative towards artistic control and aesthetic control on the one hand, and the ability to have variability, ongoing variability, and therefore increased replayability on the other hand. That balance is one that I work with all the time, and all the technical and creative decisions that my team makes and that I make. If I wanted to maximize aesthetic control, I'd keep making linear videos, where you've got complete control over the imagery, complete control over the timing, complete control over the sequencing, and complete control over the transitions. But there's a cost to replayability, and so that's I'm trying to balance, trying to maintain as much aesthetic control as I can, and still bring in some variability and therefore replayability. A little bit about my artistic practice is that I work incrementally. It's important to me that I understand the poetics of the genre within which I'm working. And within that genre, I want to understand the specific dynamics of whatever stage I'm at in my own development. So given that incremental strategy, I worked first on 5 linear ambient videos, typically 10 to 20 shots. They're fairly slow paced, so they're between 15 and 20 minutes long. Second stage, I did a first version of ReCycle, which is the generative computational piece. It was completely random. Next, I did ReCycle3, which I exhibited in Morgantown two years ago at ELO. For that piece, I added tagging. I tagged each video shot with some very simple tags based on what's in the shot. Water, mountain, trees. This one we tagged with birds, critters. Not the flamingos, but there's the parrots. Like I said, I really needed some red. My palette was a little bit limited, so I threw in some flamingos and some parrots. Based on the tagging, what the last version of the system did was it would assemble, when it picked shots from the database, it would first pick a tag. So the tag it might pick would be birds, which I think is the tag we're on right now based on the last 3 shots. So it would pick a tag at random, birds, and then it would look at all the shots in the database that were tagged with birds. And it would pick 3 of them and show them bird 1, transition, bird 2, transition, bird 3, and then it would pick a new tag. If you know anything about video production, that group of 3 shots with some significant similarity between them is the basic pattern for montage editing. And so my claim is that with the last version of this piece, I've invented a montage editor who is competent, but certainly not brilliant. If the montage editor was in my class, I'd give it a B-. And my work for the next 2 years is to turn that B- into a B+. So what I want to do is I want to add a little bit more sophistication to the tagging hierarchy and the algorithmic sequencing processes so I can build more interesting sequences. And that's what I'm working on right now. I've just started that process with the piece that you're looking at. So it's got a hierarchical tagging system. It's a fairly simple one. At the top level, I've got 2 tags, summer and winter. It'll pick summer, and it'll show the shots that are tagged with summer, and then it'll go to winter, and it'll show the tags that are tagged with winter. And I'm guessing we're in winter right now. What I want to do in future iterations is to expand the tagging hierarchy, make it more complex, and therefore expand the complexity and the capabilities of the sequencing system based on the tags. And I've got some help on that. I got a pretty good grant from the Social Science and Humanities Research Council of Canada. It's a 3-year grant, and I'm going to expand the capabilities of the system based on that grant and some partners that I'm working with. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to add sound. I've got 2 colleagues from the School of Interactive Arts and Technology that are computational sound artists. One works in recombinatorial soundscapes, and the other one works in generative music. And so we're going to work with them and find different ways to add sound effects and soundscapes to my work, and also find a way to add music to my work, and probably to join image, sound effects, and music by the time we're done. The other thing that I want to do is, as I said before, I want to expand the tagging system. I want to expand the capabilities of the sequencing system in order to do maybe some more complicated visual storytelling than I'm working on right now. Although I love the ambient video system. I got 5 to go. Thank you. I love the ambient video aesthetic, but I'm going to start to work in about a year in something a bit more complex. It's going to be, in effect, it's going to be what I would call an open documentary system. I'll be working with some of the folks at MIT in the Open Documentary Lab, as well as my colleagues at Simon Fraser University. I'll give you a sense of the kind of tags that I want to use. I've got in my mind as a first piece, I want to work with what I know best. I want to do an open documentary on Vancouver. And the kind of tags that I want to use for that, and the shots that go with this tags, would include things like commerce, manufacturing, transportation, poverty, buildings, neighborhood, pollution, culture, series of tags like that. So you can see that the palette will be a bit extended beyond the nature photography and the ambient video context that I'm working in now. And I'm looking forward to master that more complex computational and combinatorial video art and sound art. So that's what I'm doing. I want to close with, I'm cognizant of the time, I want to close with some thanks. I want to thank, as my colleagues have done, because it's right and just to do. I want to thank Kathi Berens, and I want to thank her colleagues for the opportunity to be here, and for the wonderful support that Kathi and her team has given me and the other artists since I arrived. I'm at ELO. I got to thank Nick Montfort for his unfailing patience. I asked Nick a series of very naive questions about computation, storytelling, and narrative, and he never loses patience with me, and I always appreciate it. Finally, penultimately, I want to thank Dini Rigar. Dini is my hero. What I've learned from Dini is an unrelenting commitment to excellence and to integrity at all levels, intellectual, aesthetic, communal, and personal. I thank Dini for that, as I'm sure we all do. And finally, I want to thank the ELO community. I've really enjoyed coming to the ELO conferences. This is my 3rd one. I want to keep coming. It's a wonderful set of colleagues and scholars and artists, and I'm very, very happy to be here.